Hi there, Joel from Jonesy's Auto Club and jonesysautorestoration.com, and today we are going to try and fire up the original NAPCO 1959 GMC pickup truck. It has a 700R4 transmission with a 327 small block Chevy. This is a rare truck. It's got factory power steering, factory power brakes, and if you've been following the blog, we've done a couple of posts about how we have pulled it out of the backyard of the owner's father's house and brought it down to the shop, and now we are working through the punch list to try to get everything squared away so that we can put this thing into service. Okay, so to get you caught up on what we have done, we have drained the fuel tank, made sure there's no old gas in it. There wasn't hardly any gasoline in there to count for anyway, but fuel tank has been drained. We checked the lines that go from the fuel tank up to the fuel pump. They look to be in okay condition. They'll eventually want to be changed out, but the lines coming up look good. So I don't foresee us having any fuel leaking problems initially. I've taken the fuel line off of the carburetor, and I've used my vacuum brake system bleeding tool to create a vacuum on the fuel line to bring fuel directly up to the carburetor, so that once the engine finally decides that it's going to start, it's not going to crank and crank and crank and crank and crank a whole bunch with the fuel pump not being properly primed. So in addition, we have changed the oil and made sure that all of the rest of the fluids are topped off. Everything is in good shape. So that we don't need to worry about oils like or lubrication. When you're resurrecting something that's been sitting for a really, really long time, a lot of stuff goes stale and you need to put fresh fluids in. So we've gone out and we've updated all the fluids, made sure it has coolant, tranny fluid, all that stuff is topped off so that we don't have to worry about that when we run into any issues upon startup. Okay, so now I've already primed the oil pump, so I know that the engine, once it's cranking, will actually get oil pressure. I've double checked that, and now it's time to see if the carburetor will get primed and see if we can get this thing started up. So we're going to relocate the camera and check with you under the hood. We are ready to crank this thing and hopefully get it to start after about 15 or so years of sitting. And so what I have is I've got a friend of mine in the driver's seat ready to turn this thing off just in case something goes bad. And then I'm out here, I'm going to actually manually operate the choke as well as the throttle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the throttle and I'm actually going to hold the choke blade shut so that it creates a vacuum to help pull more fluid into the engine and more fuel into the engine so that we can get a quick startup. So if all of the stars align, we'll have very minimal cranking and then it's going to start up. It's going to get really loud, so I'm probably not going to be able to talk, but then we'll be able to get a really good idea as to the condition of the engine and see how the engine is actually going to run. So, okay, Sean, go ahead and start it up. So when you have a vehicle that will only run with the choke being held on like that, I immediately think vacuum leak. This is the original Hydrovac and power steering stuff. I immediately suspect that this thing over time has created a pretty substantial vacuum leak. So what I'm going to do now is shut the camera off and I'm going to disconnect the Hydrovac system, check my belts because they're making a bunch of noise, and then come back, start it up, and see if I can start whittling away at some of these things that are a problem. Engine does sound strong. It's starting to stink a little bit in here from the exhaust, so we're going to pull it outside and continue diagnosing what's wrong. We moved the truck outside so that it doesn't continue to stink up the shop, and I have clamped off, hopefully you can see this, I've clamped off the vacuum line that goes to the vacuum boost, and then I have also disconnected the vacuum advance line that goes to the distributor so that we can try to get this thing to a stable spot. A lot of times if it's fluctuating all over the place, then the vacuum control advance unit, the vacuum advance unit, can cause things to kind of surge all over the place. Just upon initial inspection, it looks like the distributor indexing is wrong. It's cranked all the way up so that the vacuum advance unit is nearly on top of that vacuum fitting for the boost. So I suspect that vacuum, or that distributor, needs a little bit of tender loving care. So for now, what I'm going to do so that we can continue diagnosing is I'm going to go ahead and plug the vacuum advance port on the carburetor with just a regular old vacuum plug, so that we don't have more vacuum leaks. Hopefully this will prevent the boost from being vacuum. And then I'm also going to turn up the idle screw a little bit so that it will go at a higher, more stable idle. Finally, I'm going to back out the idle mixture screws by a half a turn. This is just kind of winging it at this point. I know that it needs more fuel. It's running too lean, so I'm going to back those out by half a turn to see if we can get it to a point where it will run on its own. I had it running enough to where it's starting to get a little bit of a heat into it, and we're going to go ahead and see if we can get it fully warmed up, the thermostat, get that to open, and then get it to stabilize so that we can continue diagnosing it. So Andrew, go ahead and start it up. I'm going to maintain the throttle, so I'm going to continue working the throttle and holding the choke. Good sign. It's wanting to be a little bit more stable. I'm still having to control the mixture a little bit with the throttle blade. And then when it opens up, it wants to die. So let me back off on the idle mixture screws a little bit more. We'll do another half a turn. Try to get some more fuel into the engine so that it'll stabilize on its own. Okay, go ahead, Andrew. The idle circuit kicked in, hopefully. Nope, not going to do it. So it at this point is close to running on its own, but it still is too lean. Okay, go ahead, Andrew. Amazingly, the throttle accelerator pump is actually working. Okay, so now you guys have seen me do this in other videos. I'm going to do the old brake cleaner / carb cleaner intake manifold check so I can try and identify where the vacuum leak is coming from. Because at this point, all indications are that it has a pretty good sized vacuum leak. The PCV valve hose looks good, so I don't think we have anything going on there. The PCV valve rattles, so I'm going to get some brake cleaner and we'll try and do the old brake cleaner trick. Okay, go ahead. Okay. Well, there you go. I think we can conclusively say that the throttle shaft on this carburetor or the base gasket is toast. So carburetor needs to come off, distributor needs to come out, and then we will rebuild those and try it again.